I am going to welcome Britt Gondolfi, who's going to talk us about from Bioneers about the rights of nature and honoring those rights of nature. Please welcome Britt on the keynote stage.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. My name is Britt Gondolfi. I come from Southeast Louisiana. I come from a portion of the country you may have heard referred to as Cancer Alley. I remember growing up as a child and seeing these incredible smokestacks just billowing black, gray, white, any kind of air pollution color you can imagine. I remember driving with my mom around these beautiful swamps and bayous where the cypress trees were, losing foliage from saltwater erosion. And I remember thinking to myself, is this legal? And come to find out, it in fact was. I learned in my adult life that the sad answer to my childhood naive question was yes, our system of environmental protection is one that does more work to permit pollution than it does to prevent it. And so, after spending a little bit of time working at a high school that was a fence line community to a paper mill that produced a lot of cardboard and had a lot of cancer, I decided that I was going to go to law school. And I've heard this joke that you can't tear down the oppressor's system using the oppressor's tools, but lawyers will go into a lot of debt to try. And I was definitely one of those idealist lawyers or law students that went into the system thinking, like, how can we change the laws that we have? Okay, so I went to law school looking for ways to change the law, and I was approached by an organization called Bioneers. Their mission statement is to bring about a revolution from the heart of nature. And I was invited to do research about whether or not federally recognized tribes in the United States could pass what we call rights of nature policies, and could rights of nature laws be used as ways to protect sacred sites from extractive industries? And if you are one of those lawyers that went into the system to change the system, you know that the answer to every good law question is, well, it depends. And it was in law school that I learned not only how much damage had been done to the planet through legal processes, but how much damage had been done to tribal sovereignty. And so a lot of legal scholars, I'm going to give a little legal disclaimer. This is not legal advice. This is going to be a talk about using your legal imagination. So there, waive me of all liability. I'm only barred in Louisiana. This is not legal advice. I'm trying to stimulate your creative imagination and see the law as the colonial construct that it is, and it's adaptable as our brains are and changeable. And hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll be encouraged, if you are in the legal world of activism, to pursue policies to change legal systems that we have. But with the rights of nature policies, a lot of people will point to things like a law article that came out by Christopher Stone called "Should Trees Have Standing?" There was a situation where Disney World wanted to build a ski resort in the Sequoia National Forest, and the Sierra Club was like, hell no, and they sued Disney. Well, actually, they sued the Department of Transportation chair that had given a permit to Disney World to create this highway, and it got all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was like, well, Disney World, they own this land. They can kind of do whatever they want with it, and that's the foundational pillar of the American legal system, is one that honors property rights over collective rights. And so some people will say that this law article that came out saying that Sierra Club should have the right to sue is where the rights of nature world comes from. Some people will say it was a township in Tamaqua Borough, Pennsylvania. They passed a rights of nature local ballot ordinance to stop a frack waste injection site. And there's a fantastic documentary called The Invisible Hand that Mark Ruffalo did. Shout out. If you are new to rights of nature policy, that's always a great documentary to start with. And some people will point to that, or some people will point to the Ecuadorian Constitution, which codified the rights of Pachamama. but I'm going to say that the roots of rights of nature policy work actually predates the United States. And Casey Camp Hornick of the organization Movement Rights, I always love to quote what she says in regards to rights of nature policies. It's not that we are protecting nature. We are nature. We are a part of the ecosystems that we inhabit. And by protecting nature, we're genuinely protecting ourselves. And so, oh, I'll keep this here. And so this whole notion that rights of nature policies is new to the Western legal system, I think misses the roots of where this philosophy comes from. I was once told by a federal Indian law professor, what do you think would have been the consequences for someone in the tribe, in the village, to kill the entire food source or put something into the stream that makes the water undrinkable or puts a toxic substance into the soil? What do you think the traditional law would have prescribed as a consequence for that person? And I'll let you use your legal imagination to imagine what might have happened, but I can tell you that the consequences would have been dire. And another nugget of wisdom that I will pass along from a mentor of mine was that you do not see thousands of years of continuous culture, language, and survival through an extractive system of governance. And so I know you all have maybe heard or seen the egregiously inaccurate and violent Disney film Pocahontas, but maybe you might remember a line from the film where she says, every rock, every creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. Well, I'm here to ask you whether or not every rock, creature, life, and spirit should have their day in court, because that is the mission of the rights of nature movement, is to make it possible for environmentalists to carry Mother Nature in any capacity, whether it be a species, a watershed, a sacred site, into court. And I don't want to bore you with a long law lecture about all of the crappy Supreme Court decisions that have brought us to this place where it's so difficult to litigate on behalf of an ecosystem. But I will go back to one of the alleged starts of the rights of nature movement, which is this fantastic article called Should Trees Have Standing? Because I think it helps exemplify on a very practical level what the rights of nature movement is and how it's different than our current system. And so what does it mean to have a right? Like, I have a right to not be discriminated against in my workplace, but what happens if I do? Well, I have to enforce that right. I have to create a consequence for a bad actor. And so in a Western colonial system, we have a system of rights. We have the freedom to assembly, we have freedom of speech, we have freedom to be safe and secure within our persons, but rights are only held up legally by either creating a system of consequence for those that violate rights, or, if you're ever had to file an injunction against an extractive industry coming into your community by stopping something that you see as an impending violation of rights. So if you have a right, you can bring a lawsuit on your own behalf. The court is going to be like, how much did it hurt? And how much did that hurt cost? And then you will be given relief by the court. That's the system we have, and there's lots of debate as to whether or not it's functional or broken or just designed to create a lot of profit for a lot of attorneys. That's another talk for another day. But I want to take us through a fictional scenario where we're going to talk about two different streams. One stream is going to be in our current legal system, and another stream is going to be in a future world where nature has rights. And we'll work through this whole three principles of rights, and this will kind of give the best understanding of what this movement is legally trying to achieve. And both of our streams have a really nasty polluter upstream creating problems. So in our current system, If you don't like that polluter, you are going to go and you're going to find a landowner that lives along that stream, because the courts have decided that the only people that can bring lawsuits are people that have what the courts call standing. You got to prove that you're injured. You got to prove that the polluter did it, and you got to tell us how much it costs to make it right. And so in this current system, typically environmentalists are looking for this perfect plaintiff of someone who's either suffered a health consequence or who suffered a financial consequence, like the devaluing of their property. So in this system, the court is going to look at the landowner and say, well, did you get sick? How much did that sickness cost you? Did you used to fish? Well, how much does it cost? What's the value of you fishing in the stream? Oh, you can't let your kids swim in the stream anymore. Well, we can place a value on that for sure. And so basically the courts come up with a bill of damages, and they levy it against the polluter, and they make the polluter pay the person that brought the lawsuit. So there's a couple of massive problems with our current system of litigation, in that, one, the downstream landowner may not want to bring a lawsuit. They may not have the resources to bring a lawsuit. They may not have access to attorneys to bring that lawsuit. Two, the court is oftentimes, and in many case examples, not going to ask the upstream polluter to actually change their practices. They're just going to compensate the victim for the damage that they've experienced. And oftentimes, money doesn't actually go to repair the problem, because we're living in a property law regime. So we're just protecting the rights of property owners. The stream doesn't have any rights. The stream is someone's property. And so let's just close our eyes and imagine that we're going to go into a future where the stream itself has a right. And so in this scenario, the stream is going to file a lawsuit. Well, actually, like, not the stream, it's going to be a lawyer on behalf of the stream, but the stream is going to be the named plaintiff in the lawsuit. And humans that have been harmed with the stream, we have principles in law. You can have multiple parties. We've all seen class action lawsuits. People can join. Just because you give nature rights doesn't mean that you eliminate rights for people. You're just adding nature to the table of plaintiffs in the courthouse. And so in this fictional scenario, the court is going to say, how much damage has happened to the stream? What does it take to make the stream whole? If we were to bring the stream back to where it was prior to damages, what is it going to cost? And in this rights of nature framework, we're going to be asking courts to ask the polluters to adjust and adapt their behavior to prevent future damages. And then in this scenario, the polluter will actually pay damages to a fund designated to a stream. Now, one of the very first cases that came after Ecuador passed their constitutional amendment came from a couple that were downstream landowners to a road project. And this one hypothetical that was given in this law review article in the 70s in regards to this Disney World wants to destroy the sequoias lawsuit, it manifested. It actually manifested, and they were able to, one, adjust the way the road was being built, remediate the stream, and it happened through this constitutional amendment. So if nature has standing, nature is the party filing the lawsuit, the court addresses the injury to nature, the relief goes to nature. And so I know what you're all thinking. You're like, Britt, we have environmental laws already. Like, why do we need any more laws? You lawyers, you're always here. It's like I've got like a trench coat on and I'm like, hey, I got a new environmental law for you guys to pass. And you're like, we've already had enough. And I'm like, I know. There's so many laws. What's the deal? And I often have joked that if all of these environmental laws were working, we wouldn't be in the environmental crisis that we're currently in. But don't dog on the laws, because the laws were written by some really good people, most of them in the 70s. It's really the Supreme Court that has defanged a lot of these laws. It's a lot of judicial rulings. And so, I don't want to cast any disparaging remarks against the spirit of these laws. We live in a complicated web of oligarchy where they're going to use any branch of government they can to continue their exploitive practices. So no shade on these laws, but we could definitely use some community-led new ones to revitalize the conversation as to why these aren't working. Now, we've seen rights of nature laws come up across the country, and I'll be very honest with you, the United States hates them. Many of the counties that have passed rights of nature laws, they have been sued by the extractive industry they were attempting to stop. Several states at the legislative state level have passed laws saying, no more rights of nature laws, guys. Wisconsin just tried to do this, but the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin did an incredible lobbying effort to stop that. But internationally, we are seeing these sorts of laws and jurisprudence flourish. And if you're interested in following the journey, there's a fantastic website called the Eco Jurisprudence Monitor. And they have a phenomenal map, and you can search for all kinds of environmental rights acts, rights of nature laws at every level of government. And so most rights of nature laws have three big major components. They're going to say that an ecosystem has legal personhood. They're going to identify who has the standing, which is just the fancy legal word for the right to sue. And then they're going to make a declaration of rights. And a lot of critics will say, you know, oh, why do we need to give legal personhood to ecosystems? Well, legal personhood is just the right to have your rights represented in court. And we all know from Citizens United that corporations fought really, really hard for legal personhood so that they could say that campaign contributions were a form of free speech. And I really hope that environmentalists can fight just as hard to recognize that ecosystems deserve a right at the plaintiff's table in court. And so the laws that we are seeing get passed, they'll oftentimes refer to nature, as in the Ecuadorian Constitution, they said the rights of Pachamama. Oftentimes we've seen particular plants or species protected, or a specific water body. So the diversity of these kinds of laws is just as unique as the ecosystems that they're seeking to protect. And we all live in a legal landscape, okay? We live in an environmental landscape, and we live in a legal landscape, and we're seeing these sorts of laws come up at every single level. And so the whole goal of this presentation is to ask the zero waste movement to consider creating an alliance with people in the rights of nature movement. Because I've often said that people in the zero waste movement, you guys are at the front lines of implementing what the rights of nature movement is seeking to do. And if you look at the work that you're doing through a legal criminal lens, when you have an instance of pollutants coming into your body or plastics going into a stream, legally that could be classified as battery. It could be classified as trespassing. It could be classified as a nuisance. I believe that the rights of nature movement and the zero waste movement have a tremendous amount of support that they can give one another. These policies often get a lot of press attention, and they serve as a really wonderful call and response to allies for a particular environmental cause. And the zero waste movement is putting into practice what this movement is hoping to put into law. You know, I mean, you guys are where the plastic hits the soil. You're that hand in between. And I feel like with messaging and with policy making and with rule making, that there's a lot of promise in the zero waste movement and the rights of nature movement working more close together and hand in hand. And so it's been an honor to share with you about this movement, and I'm so grateful to be in this space, and I'm so grateful for all of the phenomenal work that all of you have done. And I hope that you have a very fulfilling time here. And if anyone's interested in any resources or more information about various rights of nature policies that our organization has helped to support or that are just moving through this country and planet, I'll be tabling out there. And so I hope you have a fantastic day, and thank you for letting me open this space with you. Take care.